thank you all for coming online. This is our first training session for Boots and Beards. It's in collaboration with the Glenmore Lodge and Sports Scotland. And thank you to Glenmore Lodge guys for taking time out and putting this on for us. I'm sure there'll be loads of tips, lots of good valuable advice you want to share with us. One of the reasons why we want to do this training session, as much as we love the outdoors and would like to see more people out and about, I think there are some kind of practical health and safety kind of scenarios, or just some kind of tips that we can share about and make that hell walk more kind of memorable, more kind of enjoyable. So certain things which hopefully as we do this morning we can kind of cover. So thank you for that. This session is recorded. One of the reasons was, but we actually wanted to collate all this great information and just put it on our website. So somebody a year, 2 years down the line wants to maybe learn a bit more about hill walking, by all means, you can watch the video and hopefully take the information they want from that. It'll be on our website. And if you guys ever want to refer back to these slides or this video, again, it'll be on the website, so you can kind of give the team some time to upload all that. So that's where we are. I am going to, oh yeah, well, one more thing I was going to say was, because it's our first training session, if there are any other training topics that you would like us to cover, please do let us know, either in the chat or just email us privately, sort of thing. So that's that. Fee, Victoria,
thank you
guys. Okay, thank you.
Good to know. So I suppose, first of all, thank you for inviting Glenmore Lodge and myself and Vicky along to be part of this, and welcome to the online Discover Hill Skills. And Sarah, I think it's very great with doing the, it's great to have somebody doing the slides for me, so maybe if we stick the first slide up, that'd be wonderful. The first thing I sort of think about if I'm planning a day out is I start looking at what the weather's doing and what is the weather forecast. Partly because I want to enjoy my day out, so quite nice to go out on good weather. But if there is weather that's maybe not quite so good in the forecast, I know about it and then I can prepare for it. The two main forecasts that I use come from the Met Office and Mountain Weather Information Service. And I've put the links here for the sort of main mountain specialist forecasts for both the Met Office and MWIS as starting points. Once you get into them, then they have forecasts that give us the weather relating to the hills. So in the Met Office, we've got two options. We've got a summit or place-specific computer-generated weather forecast with hour-by-hour detail, and it has ongoing updates. The actual specialist mountain forecast has input from a human weather person, a meteorologist, and it gives us the temperature and wind speeds from glen level right through the summits. So it's very useful for planning if you're looking for a walk in the forests, in the Lochans, around the lower hills, even in the parks, perhaps around Glasgow or Edinburgh, or if you're heading up into the higher hills as well, because you get that information relative to the height that you're going to be at. It's updated twice a day, and I get a bit sort of geeky with the weather when I'm planning to go out, is that I'll be looking the week before, I'll be looking the day before, and then I'm looking the morning before, and then I'm checking again when I get out my car just to see if there's any changes. The other main mountain one is the Mountain Weather Information Service, which I've just mentioned, and it does weather forecasts for the hilly regions of the UK. And having a look at the one that is probably most relevant to most of you if you're based around Glasgow is the southeastern Highlands, which includes Perthshire and the Oak Hills, so all hill areas that are very accessible from the central belt. It also covers Cairngorms, the northwest, the Highlands. It gives daytime weather, so it doesn't really give you what's going on overnight like the Met Office one, but it does give you the wind speeds and the temperatures, and all those are relevant to being at Munro level, so around about 900 metres. So if you're planning to go up into the bigger hills, then that's a really useful forecast to look at. And the reason I look at two is because they use different models, and they might pick up on the timing of weather fronts coming across at different points. So by looking at both, you kind of get an overview of what one might say. Some rain's coming in earlier. One might say that the winds are going to be higher. So it gives you kind of a broader view of it to take into account with your planning. And that kind of leads on to, you know, why have I started with weather, and why is it so important to us? Well, it then tracks into our planning of our routes. If the weather's poor, strong winds, really wet, cold, snowy, blizzards, whatever, we might be looking to be lower level. Whereas if it's blue sky and sunshine, then perhaps the ideal opportunity for going up high, somewhere higher. And the type of walking that we want to do as well. If it's windy, we might be wanting to avoid a ridge, and again stay lower. But if it's calmer winds, then again more opportunity to be maybe a bit more, to travel a bit further or travel a bit higher with our planning. The weather also impacts on what clothing and kit that we'll take with us on our journey, what we'll wear. If it's warm, then, you know, shorts and t-shirts, sunglasses, sun hats, it's all very nice. If it's a colder day, then more warm layers, thicker trousers, thicker tops, hats, gloves. And the same with dry and wet. If it's a dry day, I must admit, I take a lot of convincing to leave my waterproofs behind, because after all, we are in Scotland and rain never seems to be that far away. But if it is a summer day, then maybe leave the waterproofs behind and just take some windproofs instead. The weather is also going to impact on our route choice in the sense of what navigational skills do we have. If it's poor weather up high and perhaps poor visibility, cloud, rain, wind, it's going to be harder for us to perhaps manage the navigation side of things. Whereas if we're following paths, then perhaps it's a bit easier. So trying to adapt our route choice to what the weather's giving us as well will also help us in our planning. And I've certainly seen myself on days when it's like it is here in Aviemore just now, it's pretty windy and cold. So planning to go up onto Cairngorms for me today would be a bit of a no-no, I think. I'd be looking to perhaps walk in the forests and get a bit of shelter. And then that's from looking at the forecasts, but it's also by looking out the window and see what is actually happening. And that kind of leads into, why do we consider the forecasts for different heights? So if we're still on the same slide, thanks, Ira. The temperature drops roughly 2 degrees for every 300 meters of height that we go up. So I can see I'm going to challenge you all arithmetically here. But if you think of the summit of Cairngorm as being 1,245 meters height, and Aviemore is at 200 meters, that means that the difference there would indicate that it's going to be about 7 degrees cooler on the summit than it is in the village. So if it's, I think they're saying it's +1 on the summit at the moment. And it's probably about 8 degrees here, 9 degrees here. So that's what's happening. Not only does the temperature decrease with height, the wind increases with height. So up in the mountains, it can be roughly double at sort of Munro height what it would be at sea level. So more wind, less heat. And combining those, it gives us what you might see in the weather forecast as the feels like temperature, which is wind chill. The heat generated by our bodies is blown away. So again, back to that temperature on Cairngorm today, it's +1 and winds of 35 miles per hour. So it's going to feel like -8. So big difference, but that's just what it feels like. When it's windier, gusty, then it's more difficult to walk. And also it's worth us taking into account what direction the wind's coming from. If we're doing perhaps a circular route, we might want to think about, are we starting off the day with the wind in our faces so that when we're tired at the end of the day, the wind is at our back, blowing us home. So, and this is just a starting point, the start of the planning and the start of getting excited about our journey that we're wanting to do, which I think is all part of it for me, definitely. Sarah, if we could have the next slide. Thank you. So where can we go? In Scotland, we've got right of responsible non-motorised access. So what does that mean for us? It means that it excludes some areas, such as fields of crops and gardens. And when we're sort of lower down, so maybe in and around the cities, the central belt, not up in the hills, there will be core paths which are made available by the local authority, and these are accessible by everybody. They're designed to be accessible for all sorts of mobility, as it were. But out in the hills, pretty much we can go where we can go anywhere. I hesitate to say anywhere because there are some areas that we can't go to, but landowners and recreational users are to work together to and they are considerate of each other's interests. So perhaps one of the instances I've come across is where there's been lambing going on, and the farmers sort of respectfully asked that you stay out of the field whilst, or don't go through that field whilst the lambing's going on. And stalking might be another one, so maybe short restrictions for a period of time. And that idea that if we respect the landowners are respectful of the leisure users, then life's a much better place. If people are watching here from down south in England and Wales, obviously there's different access laws there as well. And they involve using rights of way to access open land high up. Information on where you can and can't go is available on the maps, generally a 1 in 25,000 map. But just to really highlight that it's different down south from in Scotland. So we have guidebooks and magazines, and the guidebooks cover low level, high level, and everything in between. And magazines always have, maybe people use magazines less these days, but interesting articles that can inspire through pictures and through prose, through text. But maybe the main one now is social media. We all look to social media for ideas and inspiration. And one of the good walking sites out there that again covers low and high level walks is Walk Highlands. And then, of course, we have Facebook, Instagram, and all those things, which are about us sharing experiences with our friends and providing inspiration to others and getting inspiration from other people. I suppose the caveat there is that when you see a friend's photos and it's blue sky and sunshine, you think, I want to do that. it might not be blue sky and sunshine by the time you go, so it's always worth checking the forecast too. Sarah, could I have the next slide, please? Thank you. So who's coming with us? It could be that we're with friends, family, or walking solo on our own. And with friends and family, consideration is that does the group's abilities and fitness suit the walk? Is everybody sort of sharing the walk, and is everybody motivated to enjoy the walk? Do we have young children with us? As young children tire more easily, need more warm clothes, and enjoy little treats along the way, and perhaps a favourite toy to help walk with them, maybe. But from our point of view, as maybe the adults with the little children, can we shorten our walk, turn back, or carry or push them if little legs get tired? If it's a group walk, has the group shared in the planning? Or is somebody perhaps the designated leader who's got more experience and is providing a bit of guidance for the group and sharing their experience with the rest of the group, and perhaps passing on some skills along on the day? But the idea that if everybody's kind of included in the planning, and even if young children are included in the planning, then everybody sort of buys into it more. Good one, Naz. Bring seats. Yeah, and if everybody's and the children, if they're involved in the planning of it as well, they'll feel more included and feel like it's their day, not just your day that they're getting taken along with. And yeah, if we could move on to the next slide. So this is kind of an example of what would be typical of what's in my bag at this time of year. And probably pretty much any kind of walk where I was out for a few hours. And starting off with the rucksack. So the rucksack being something that I can comfortably get everything into. I've got, for me, I like to pack the stuff that I think I'm not going to use at the bottom. So the big orange bag and the first aid kit probably near the bottom of the bag, because I'll always take them, but I'm not really planning on using them, hopefully. And then I've got a spare warm layer. That's the sort of big red puffy thing. And I've got also some spare hats and gloves. If it was with children, I'd also have loads of spares for them as well. I've got food and drink, which is very important. And always tasty food, definitely tasty food. And a head torch, because especially at this time of year, then the days are starting to get shorter, and it is perhaps a bit easier to get caught out with the darkness, but it's a good thing just to be in the habit of carrying as well. And earlier on, we talked about the wind and the effect of the wind on how we keep warm. So my waterproofs are in there, not just for protection against the water, but for protection against the wind as well. And it's amazing how much warmth you can get by just protecting yourself from a cooling breeze. I've also got trekking poles in there, and they may or may not get used, but they can be useful and just help with balance perhaps, or if you were maybe had a wee stream to cross, then they can be helpful in sort of planting the poles in the stream to step across it, again, a sort of balance aid. And something they say it's very much a personal choice whether you take poles or not. With a big heavy bag, I would take poles, because then it just makes the walking so much easier. There's a whistle in there as well at the front, so, and that kind of will tie in with the, we talk about at the end about sort of safety and when things go wrong, but having a whistle to attract attention if things do go wrong, which is also could be the function of the head torch as well, to flash, so to sort of say, show where you are, your location. The contents of the bag isn't quite the same all year round. So sometimes I'll dump the hat and gloves and add in sun hat and sunglasses and sun cream. And often in August, when there's no breeze to blow the midges away, midge repellent and a midge net will be in there too. And as the days get colder, I might add in more warm layers. So it's always a bit of flexibility in what's going on there. And then clothes that we wear. So appropriate footwear for the terrain that you're going to be going on. So essentially, if you're off paths, perhaps something that gives more ankle support. On paths, things like approach shoes can work well. But the important thing being that they've got a good grippy sole, and they're comfortable for you, they fit you well. And I suppose working the way up then, a nice pair of socks that again are well fitting, and appropriate clothing for the weather that you find yourself in. So again, in summer conditions, it could be shorts and a t-shirt, whereas in winter, we've got windproof trousers, warm layers, and best to avoid cotton, especially in the colder months, because as we're moving, what happens is obviously we sweat, so anything that is cotton will get damp, and that will mean that we'll then our bodies are trying to work hard to dry that off, so we actually get chilled and we can get cold that way. Cotton's good in summer when we want to be cool, but in winter or the colder months, best avoided, and having good wicking layers, so layers that take any sort of moisture away and keep you feeling comfortable, and therefore keep you feeling warm. What else would I have in my bag? Well, probably the more technical stuff. So I would probably have a camera as well to take photos to remember my day. And that would also lead into the phone. So if we flip on to the next slide, that would be good. Thank you. So again, here I've got, I'm asking the question, conventional mapping or digital? And my answer with that to that question would have to be actually probably both. So if I'm out on my own, I'll have my map, compass, my watch with a stopwatch facility, a backup compass and a backup map. And that's because if I lose one, I want to know I've got the other one. I've got my phone fully charged, and my phone has digital mapping downloaded onto it. And there's different subscriptions available. There's ones where you can download the maps to your phone storage, and that means that your mapping will work without a data signal. Some mapping does need a data signal to be there. And in lots of places in Scotland, once you're sort of away from the main roads and the main towns and cities, data signals might be very limited, although it is getting better. So sort of things to, if you are using digital mapping, to consider if it's stored on your phone. Does it work when your phone doesn't have a data signal? But I kind of like to think of having both, because if phones are fallible, the battery could die. You've got to ask the question: is your phone waterproof? How well does it work in the rain? Is it in a case? Whereas the map and map case and compass with the right skills and the watch will work in any weather. But it might take you a bit longer with the map and the compass and the watch. And you might have to give a bit more time in your journey to the navigation side of things. Whereas with the phone, if it just switches on and go ping and it says, oh, you're here, it's quite nice. But the map and compass, well, what could go wrong? I could drop a compass, I could have a map blow away, hence I've got backup. The phone could run out of power. So what do I do for that? I'll carry a backup power supply. So I suppose there's place for both, but I would suggest it very much is both. And I don't think I could see myself giving up a map and compass and just using the phone alone, because I'd always have that wee bit of fear of if I switched it on and it didn't work, what would I do? But as more and more the digital mapping improves and there's more and more routes available for us to upload to our phones from the internet, and then we can follow them. And what's interesting with them is that if we're uploading a route, digital mapping tends to go from point to point in straight lines. Whereas if we were actually following a route, in reality, we might walk in curves and we might walk around things. So depending on how that route has been plotted on the map, we'd have to sort of think about, is actually that plotting the way we would walk in reality, or is it just linked to summits and drawn a straight line between the two? So that's something to be cautious with if you're uploading routes, is just to have a look at the map and see, are they following sort of realistic lines? I think that's everything there. Oh yeah, backup power and making sure you've got waterproof phone or case. And then finally, if we can move on to the last slide. With all the best planning that we can possibly do, things can still go wrong. And especially what if there is an accident or somebody is unwell. And that kind of then comes, first of all, thinking about the planning that we've done beforehand. And that could be something like having your mobile phone registered with the police text service, which is text register to 999, and then you'll get instructions back from that. And that means that perhaps if you've got a very minimal phone signal, maybe just like 1 bar on your phone, you could send a text, whereas you wouldn't be able to perhaps make a phone call. And also ensuring that we've got the appropriate kit and clothing with us. And people can become unwell, or a slip or a stumble may cause an injury. And it could be on a hill or it could be at low level. And then, so I'm saying on the hill, but really that should have been outside. We'd want to keep anybody that's maybe injured and everybody in our group warm and dry. Because if we do have to call mountain rescue, if we're unable to walk off the hill, then our mountain rescue teams are made up of volunteers, and they're more than likely at work. So they have to get from work to the rescue base and then get kitted up and get out to wherever the casualty is to help them and assist them off the hill. That can take a while. It could take 2 to 3 hours, possibly longer, depending on where you are. And sometimes there could be a helicopter available, but it's not guaranteed. There's also information that we would need to provide. So keeping warm and dry in the first instance, looking after the person who's perhaps unwell, and then finding out your location so that you can pass that on. What 3 words is becoming very popular, but there's also OS Locate is an app available for your phone, a free app, Ordnance Survey, and it works through the GPS on your phone. So again, doesn't need a data signal, and it will give the grid reference, which you could then pass on to the rescue services. And the way to call them is basically by calling 999 and asking for police mountain rescue, because it's the police that will coordinate with mountain rescue. And that kind of ends us on what is sort of like the worst case scenario, but the best case scenario is that this doesn't happen. You enjoy planning and get out on the hills and enjoy the fresh air, the being part of a group that's also out on the hills. Be safe, and yeah, really that's it from me. Anybody, any questions? That's a good question. What kind of bag? Rucksack. That one is about a 25-litre bag, so not overly huge, quite a nice size. It doesn't need to be full.
I was going to ask a question about the what 3 words. I was told by other excuse me, by other mountain kind of leaders sort of thing, saying that they were trying to encourage people not to use what 3 words what 3 words, because when you're calling up and you're saying the 3 words, then you might certain words sound different on the phone, so the person listening to it might pick up the wrong words sort of thing. So I don't know, that's what I was told, but like there are other better apps out there. I mean, what's your take on that?
No, certainly. I think that if you can give a grid reference through using something like OS Locate, I think that would be my first and foremost, and it's one that I've had sort of speaking to members of rescue teams. They would far rather be given a grid reference than a what 3 words. But what 3 words is out there, and it's something that a lot of people will have on their phone, so it's better than nothing. Mm-hmm. But that's I would say it sits well below ordnance giving a grid reference for me.
Okay, I was just going to say, if anybody else got any questions, you can either use the chat option, and hopefully I think Sarah has unmuted everyone as well. So you could basically use the just go on like I've done and just kind of ask a question directly if you want to.
Thanks. Flares. Okay. Probably something that rescue teams use if they're calling in helicopters to establish wind direction. Not maybe something that you would carry as part of a sort of rescue kit, unless, again, maybe you were actually involved in mountain rescue itself. so we have other ways of, I guess, of identifying where we are and letting people know where we are. And flares as well, if used in the wrong context. So if used at night and a flare was sent off, then potentially, I guess, a helicopter looking for people, it could destroy their night vision as well. So that maybe is useful, but in the hands of people who know the right place and time to use them.
Brilliant, thanks. Someone's asking, what do you carry in your first aid bag, Fee?
Oh, in my first aid kit. So there's this is going to sound daft, things to deal with messy things. So like triangular bandages, or a triangular bandage, a big sort of gauze pad, sort of blister treatment, some tick twisters as well, for getting rid of ticks. But yeah, things that kind of I can improvise with. So if somebody's got a bad cut, I can sort of cover it up and wrap it up, tie it up, or but it's all stuff that I know what to do with. So there's not midge spray. It's a good one. Yeah, things that are sort of basic that you could deal with a sprain or a cut, and enough to keep somebody comfortable and either walk them off the hill, or if it was anything more than that, it would be involving a rescue team. Okay. But there's, I mean, first aid courses, 2-day first aid courses out there that are very good, particularly run by people who are coming at it from the outdoors, and well worth perhaps something that if you're interested in that kind of thing, it going on. Oh, good question. Yeah. If you're trekking through woodland and you're following paths, then and you've got your map and compass, the compass you can use to find out first and foremost what direction you're walking in, and relating that back to the map, because if we can work out what direction we're walking in just from the compass, so if you've got your compass out and you point it along the path, it will tell you what direction you're walking in. If you can identify where north is, and then from there north, east, south and west, and then looking at your map and work out what path could you be on, and then thinking and trying to eliminate where you couldn't be, and then trying to build up a story of, well, if I'm on this path and I walk there, if I walk north, what will I come to? I'll come to a road. If I come to the road, that's great, because that's what I'm expecting to happen. So it's a bit of relocation. In a way, it's quite hard to explain without actually showing. But we'd be relocating and thinking, where have I come from? What have I passed? What have I seen? Where could I be? And if I carry on, what will happen?
Okay, cool.
Oh, I missed that one, sorry. What was?
Yeah, Dave is just basically saying, listen, about the idea of letting somebody know where you're going, especially when you're out in the hills. You see a lot of solo walkers out with the dogs, sort of thing, and some of them, they're up doing some great heights, and you think it takes a lot of either their experience, but even the most experienced one could experience falls as well, and little trips. So it's like just into the habit of just letting somebody know where you're going, and maybe what you're wearing as well, what colours you're wearing. So if the person hasn't seen you or hasn't seen you come back, they can pass on some general description of you to the proper authorities, sort of thing. So I think that's what David was coming at here.
Definitely. And I just realised that I talked about being out with friends and family as a group, but then I forgot to go back and talk about the solo walking, which is exactly about that, leaving a route plan with somebody who actually understands hill walking. So, you know, I kind of use the example that if I left a route plan with my mum and then I was late back by about 10 minutes, she'd be panicking. But if I leave it with somebody who actually understands about hill walking, then they can sort of think through my plan and think where I could be, and they might even start phoning me and not be alarmed if I don't have a signal, because they might understand where we are. But yes, so if it's definitely solo walking, because as Nav says, totally accidents do and still can happen. But having left a plan with somebody, and it doesn't need to be detailed. It can just be, I'm leaving here, I'm parking here, and when I get back to you. What was the one? Can you explain the call for help? Depends if you can walk. If you can manage to get yourself off the hill or back to your car, then that would be the deciding thing. If you really can't walk, then you're going to need other people to help you. But and you know, that's where things like being with friends who could perhaps help you hobble out, or if you've got poles that could help, or even strapping up your foot in the boot, keeping the boot on. Yeah, very much that. How bad is the injury? If you can get yourself out, then best to. But if you really can't, and you need assistance from the rescue teams, then they will always come out and help.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you don't have a question either, if you have any kind of tips you want to share, again, feel free to kind of pass them on. One of the things that when we go out walking, I always try to encourage in the sense that it's good to take photographs and stuff like that, but discourage them to looking on, because using their phone while they're walking, and if it's a cobble path, then it's they're looking down, they're not looking around them, sort of thing, and it's normally the trip, and if you're at the edge, then you can always kind of like fall over, sort of thing as well. And people, you have this tendency of taking a photograph, but you want to share it there and then on your platform, so you can't walk and look down at the same time. You should kind of be a bit more sensible that way. So I always kind of encourage, just remind people, listen, put your phones away, you know what I mean, because the worst thing is when you get called, when you have to call out emergency rescue, and you explain to them what actually happened. It's embarrassing, the fact that I fell because I was posting on social media. I mean, it's a bit bad. So yeah, that was that.
That's a very good point, actually. And yeah, I mean, taking the time to stop and take photos, but yeah, perhaps not doing them on the hoof, as it were, as we're walking along. So that's a good one. And there was a question popped up about charges for rescue as well. In this country, in UK, mountain rescue is volunteers that run the rescue teams, and they don't charge for it. We don't need insurance here. Yeah. But it's bearing in mind we are calling out a volunteer rescue service. They're not financed except by sort of donations and yeah, it's a charity.
Okay, cool. Guys, any more questions? Any more tips? Anything else you want to ask before Fee disappears into the wilderness? I know we spent, it was quite hard to kind of pin her down and the date and stuff. So please do use this opportunity and time to ask any question you may have. One of the questions I was going to ask was that what would be a good age? And maybe it's a bit of a daft question, but you know what? Yeah, I get asked all the time, or can my kid come along? They're 3 years old, 4 years old. Can they come along? Should I bring them? And I would say, yeah, go for it. But there comes a point where you've got to take into account and something on social media. I've seen little kids and people taking their babies up to do Monroes and stuff, and you're thinking, oh, that's crazy. But hats off to them. It's like they kind of want to push the bucket out, push the boat out, sort of thing. So
yeah, I mean, I suppose every I think every family is going to be different, and I have friends who come from a very outdoorsy kind of background and have introduced their kids to the hills very, very young. But I guess they kind of they know all the preparation that needs to go along with taking a young one out onto the hills. So I suppose it kind of, if people are taking a young child, they are understanding the consequences and are prepared for it. So that might be that they have an outdoors buggy that they can push them in, or they're prepared to put them in the back and carry them, that they've got the extra warm layers or the sweets and treats to keep motivation high. Because I guess the last thing we want to do is put young children off going hill walking, and we want to encourage them, don't we? So it's how we do that works for the family as a whole. So yeah, it maybe doesn't answer your question at all, but I totally get where you're coming from.
I also just wanted to share a wee tip as well, and you're probably never going to use it, but you know, if it happens, it's a blessing. And someone said to me, goes, always carry a spare bootlace. So if you're out and about and your bootlaces snap, you're buggered, because you need to come back with either a broken bootlace, and that's nothing worse than you up there. So always carry a spare bootlace as well. So as a backup, just in case. So also ask, could you just the reasons why we carry 2 or 3 pairs of hats and gloves? Why is that? It's quite interesting.
So with hats and gloves, it depends on the weather, but if gloves get wet, generally they're useless, and there's nothing worse than having wet, cold gloves on. But if and a hat, well, in that case, I had a hat and a buff in there, so it's like I've got the hat on, and then if it was super cold, I could perhaps put the buff on and the hat and have both on. So one's kind of a backup, but with gloves, and you know, you should see the number of gloves I pack on a cold day. There's probably about 4 or 5 pairs of gloves in there, especially if it's going to be damp.
Okay.
So yeah.
Good, thank you for clearing that up. Got a question here. How can you check if you are fit and healthy for certain walks? How should you gauge it and how it's right for you?
Yeah, good question. I suppose in the planning of the walk, if you're uncertain, is to sort of start off and maybe have targets along the way. You think, well, I can get to here, and then I can get to here, and I can get to here, and always be prepared that maybe, oh, if it starts to feel too much for me, can I turn back? And not being committed perhaps to a bigger route until you've gained confidence in your skills and your ability and your fitness to do that, and just start small and build up.
Yeah. And just on that, I would just say, listen, there's maybe many times we've taken groups out and you're there, you're walking for 2 or 3 hours, and the summit's just there. It's just like another half an hour, but you can see a snowstorm coming in, or it's going to get really bad. You can just feel it in the air, and you just got to make a decision. You know what? I'll love to do it, but I'm going to be sensible and just go back. So don't be scared to go back as well. I mean, you don't have to. You can always come back, but I think there's always an opportunity for that to go back and finish it off, sort of thing. So, and on the Walk Highlands webpage, all the walks are kind of graded as well, so you can see which one is suitable for you. So, like Phoebe saying, just start off with the easy one and kind of build your stamina up from there. So that's a good one there. Okay, I think we're kind of coming up towards the 1 hour mark here. So if no one has any more questions, or then basically we can move on to the final slide, which is the navigation course. And I think Fee was saying there's only so much you can talk about over Zoom, but is what you learn in practical, in real life, in practical sense, and face to face is probably a different story. It's good having all the rules and all the tips and safety, but in real life, how do you apply it? That's a different story. So we've got a navigation course that we have arranged with Glenmore Lodge. Again, it's the first one that we've ever done. It's on Sunday, the 31st of October. And we'll be talking basically exactly what we've covered today, and hopefully more as well. So the whole point of this was trying to get people more and more aware of what's around them and how to basically prepare for the hill walks. It's on Sunday. We've only got 20 spaces available, and we have put a small charge to it as well, because normally these courses are quite expensive as well. And if you're living around the Glasgow area, I think this is right up your street. It's in Mugdock Country Park, not too far away. So by all means, I would recommend it. The ladies have taken the time out to come out and help out, sort of thing, and they obviously want to get you guys to enjoy the hill walks to its maximum, to the maximum. So listen, I'm going to wrap up from there. If you want to book up, again, the web link is there, bootsandbeers.co.uk navigation course. We would love to hear your feedback. It's the first time we're doing this. How did we do it? Did we cover everything? And what else would you like to hear about or talk about in the future? Because I think the outdoor kind of activity side is going to grow over the next couple of years. So it'd be good to get more and more people from the communities out and enjoying all that. So that's that. And feedback, sorry, yeah, Sarah, thanks. Feedback is to info@bootsandbeers.co.uk. I think I've done my job for today. Is any other questions, Fee? Anything else you want to share with us, or any last closing remarks?
No, just go out, enjoy, be safe. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Vicky, you've been very quiet. Did you want to say anything? Can you unmute? No, she can't unmute. She just tapped. No. Okay. Listen, thanks a lot, everyone, and hopefully see you on the hill at some point soon. Okay. All the best. Enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you very much. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.